The Zack Files. Double the pages, double the fun. It's Itcheraft. By Dan Greenburg, illustrated by Jack E. Davis. Chapter 1. Do you think 10 is too young to get married? I used to think so, but now I'm not so sure. I'll tell you why. My name is Zack. I'm in the 5th grade at the Horace Hyde-White School for Boys in New York. My parents are divorced, and I spend about half my time with each of them. It's when I'm with my dad that the really weird stuff happens. Like the story I'm about to tell you. I was on my way to school one morning in late October. I took a shortcut through a little park near Dad's apartment building. The leaves on the trees were golden red, and the ones that had fallen to the ground crunched under my feet. I could already feel cold gusts of wind in the air. As I cut through the park, I saw a girl who was about my age. She looked so amazing, I almost blew my cool. I'm not even all that interested in girls, if you want to know the truth. Most of the girls I know are kind of annoying. I mean, they whisper to each other and giggle, and you know they're saying mean things about you. Or you think you must have spinach stuck in your teeth. Or your fly is unzipped or something. But this girl was different. She had this very shiny black hair and green eyes, and her cheeks were kind of red, like she'd been ice skating or something cold like that. She was wearing very weird clothing, a very long, dark dress with long sleeves, funny black shoes, and a white bonnet on her head. She looked kind of like a pilgrim. Why was she dressed like that? Was she going to a costume party? In the early morning? Halloween wasn't for another week. As the girl crossed my path, she stopped and stared at me like I was the one who looked weird. And then she seemed to see something that scared her, and she ran away. I just stood there like a moron, watching her run. I don't understand this at all, but I suddenly felt I had to talk to her. I started running after her, but it was too late. She just disappeared. I couldn't figure out where she went. I walked into the bushes. But all I saw was an owl. Now that was odd, too. An owl in the morning. I really wanted to find her. I don't know why. I told myself it was because I wanted to ask her to the 5th grade Halloween dance, but that was only part of it. If I had known then what I know now, I might not have tried to find her. Because following her led me into the scariest, the most dangerous and the longest adventure of my life. Chapter 2. I got to school about 5 minutes before the first bell. The guys in my homeroom were discussing the Halloween dance. It's going to be so hard to decide who should get to go with me to the Halloween dance, said Vernon. How come? I asked. Vernon is this really rich guy who sweats a lot. Well, on my block alone there are at least 6 girls who are in love with me, said Vernon. Whichever one I choose, the others will suffer. Poor things. Of course, whoever I choose will ride in our family limousine. I was planning to take my date in a limousine, said Andrew. But everybody does that. I think I'll rent a helicopter instead. Andrew tries to top anything anybody else says. He can't help it. Who are you going to invite, Andrew? I asked. Well, if Britney Spears can't get out of this other thing she has that night, said Andrew, Teal take Emily. Who's Emily? Asked Vernon. Emily's my mom's foot doctor's receptionist's daughter, said Andrew. But she has her own band, and she's going to be bigger than Britney. Spencer, who are you going to invite? Asked Andrew. Spencer is the smartest kid in our school, maybe in all of North America. I'm trying to calculate the odds of which girl is most likely to accept my invitation, said Spencer. I almost had it figured out, but then the battery in my calculator ran out. You know, I said, this whole dance thing is making me a little nervous. I mean, I've never asked anybody out before. Have any of you? I haven't actually been on a date, said Spencer. But I've done all the things you do on a date, except not on the same night and not with the same girl. What do you mean? I said. Well, one night I picked up this girl at her home, said Spencer. My parents are friends with her parents, and we drove her to a dance lesson. On a second night, I ate in a restaurant with a different girl. She was my cousin and she threw up. On a third night, I sat next to another girl in a movie, although it's true I didn't know her. On a fourth night, I walked yet another girl home. She had a book I wanted to borrow. Those are all things you do on a date, right? If you put them together, said Spencer, I've been on a whole date. I went on a date once, I said. Except it turned out the girl I was with didn't actually realize she was with me, so I didn't have to talk to her or anything. I've been dating for years, said Andrew. I was practically engaged once, but my parents made me break it off. Did the girl know she was engaged to you? I asked. Yuck, yuck, said Andrew. You're just jealous because I happen to have a social life. What about you, Vernon? Asked Spencer. Have you ever been out on a real date? That question is so humiliating, I'm not even going to answer it, said Vernon. In other words, no, said Spencer, laughing. I don't see why we have to ask girls to this stupid dance anyway, said this big kid, George Van Zant. Girls are boring. George is a jock. He only cares about sports. George is right, said Edward. Why do we have to take a girl? Who would you rather take? I asked. Somebody I could have fun with, said Edward. Like my dog, Ernie. Everybody laughed, but Edward was serious. I kind of understood what he was saying. The girls our age are usually taller than we are and look older than we do. Also, they act older. I'm not saying that's a good thing, by the way. Anyway, it kind of makes them conceited. I don't know why, but I didn't think the girl I saw in the park would be like that. She didn't look any older than me, and her weird clothing made her seem a little geeky. That's fine with me. I don't think I'm ready for anybody too cool. I didn't think too much more about that girl for the rest of the day except at lunch, when I thought about her a lot. After school, as I was leaving the building, I got the shock of my life. Outside the front entrance, talking to my science and homeroom teacher, Mrs. Coleman-Levin, was the same girl I had seen in the park. I got really excited, but I didn't dare go over and say hello. As soon as the girl left, though, I ran up to Mrs. Coleman-Levin. Who was that girl you were talking to, Mrs. Coleman-Levin? I asked. She's a distant relative of mine who's staying with me for a brief period of time, said Mrs. Coleman-Levin mysteriously. Why do you ask? Well, I said, I've seen her a couple of times now, and I find her, you know, extremely interesting. You find her attractive, said Mrs. Coleman-Levin. Well, you know, maybe. I definitely don't find her unattractive. Mrs. Coleman-Levin frowned. Zack, I must warn you, she said. For safety's sake, please do not attempt to get to know this girl. Do not even attempt to speak to her. Put her out of your mind entirely. Why? There are some things better left unexplained, she answered in a voice so creepy that I said okay and walked away. Mrs. Coleman-Levin was making such a big deal about my never getting to know this girl or even speaking to her, I decided to forget her. That decision lasted about 4 minutes. The more I tried not to think about her, the more I did. Does that ever happen to you? I decided to take a different route home. One that went past Mrs. Coleman Levin's apartment building. It's actually about 2 miles out of the way, but I thought I might accidentally bump into the mystery girl I wasn't supposed to think about. No sign of her. I figured I'd wait a little while, and then if she came out I would say, "Hey, what a coincidence, running into you." It would all seem very natural, as long as Mrs. Coleman Levin wasn't with her. So I waited. And after only 2 hours, the girl came out. "Hey," I said, "what a coincidence running into you. I'm in Mrs. Coleman Levin's homeroom and my name is..." "Zachariah," said the girl. "I know. Actually, it's just Zack," I said. "But how do you know my name?" "I know a great deal about you, Zachariah." "You do?" I said. "Oh, I guess Mrs. Coleman Levin must have told you." "Zachariah, I know that you find me comely." "Comely?" I said. "It means pleasing to the eye. I find you comely as well, but we must never be together." "Why not?" I said. "I fear I cannot tell you that." "Who are you?" I asked. I suddenly got this terrible itch right between my shoulder blades. "It is not important," she said. "Yes, it is," I said. "It is to me." "What's your name? Where do you come from? Why are you dressed like that?" The itching between my shoulder blades got really terrible. I tried to scratch it without being too obvious. She didn't answer my question, although it seemed like she wanted to. Then, suddenly, she blurted out a whole lot of words really fast. "My name is Prudence. I am not from your time, I am from the past. I am Mrs. Coleman Levin's great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. To you, I suppose I would be 321 years old. We must never speak again. Farewell." Then she ran away. I stood there with my mouth open, itching, and trying to let all the weird things she told me sink in. Chapter 3. "Zack, where were you?" asked Dad. I was beginning to get really worried. "I'm sorry, Dad," I said, scratching my side. "I met a long-lost relative of Mrs. Coleman Levin's outside her building. We were talking. I guess I didn't notice how late it was getting." "You were talking to a kid on the street all this time?" "Well, she isn't exactly a kid," I said, scratching my chest. "Her name is Prudence. She's about 321 years old." "Excuse me?" "Prudence is not from our time, she's from the past," I said. "She looks about 10, but she says she's Mrs. Coleman Levin's great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother." "I see," said Dad. "Well, she certainly has a wonderful imagination." "You don't think she could be a time traveler from the past?" I asked. She was dressed in real old-fashioned clothes. A long, dark dress and a bonnet and stuff. I scratched my back. I had started itching while I was talking to Prudence. I wondered if there was any connection. Maybe Prudence had cooties. Not that there was anything wrong with cooties. "Your friend is probably Amish," said Dad. "The Amish dress and speak like they live in the past. They don't ride in cars or buses or planes. They don't use electricity or zippers or anything that isn't mentioned in the Bible." "Zippers aren't mentioned in the Bible?" I said. "No." "Why aren't they?" I said. "Because they didn't have zippers in biblical times." "Could you please help me set the table?" "Sure, Dad," I said. We put out plates and silverware. "So, how was your day?" My dad is a magazine writer. He gets to investigate and write about some really interesting things. Once he wrote a piece on the San Diego Zoo. He got to actually handle a real 20-foot-long python. It pooped on him. I've been doing research for an article about antiques from the Pilgrim era, said Dad. For some reason, the stuff has really gotten popular. Not the fake stuff. Genuine stuff from the 17th century. It's been popping up in antique stores all over New York. Okay, maybe not everything Dad writes about is interesting. Dad, ever since I talked to Prudence, I've been itching like crazy. Any suggestions? Yes. Take a shower. Then finish setting the table. After dinner, I called Spencer. Guess what? I said. I met somebody who's either 321 years old or Amish. Why can't the person be both? Asked Spencer. Good question, I said. See what I mean about Spencer's being smart? And open-minded, too. Notice, he didn't say, "Are you crazy?" Nobody lives to be 321 years old. So was it a really old man or a really old woman? Neither one. It was a girl who looks about 10. She claims to be Mrs. Coleman Levin's let me try and get this right great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. Obviously, she's not from our time. She said she's from the past, but she didn't say what part exactly. Was she speaking English? Yeah. Why? She said she's 321 years old, said Spencer. Yeah. I could tell Spencer was doing some fast subtraction in his head. That means she's from around 1692, said Spencer. Then he thought for a moment. You know, Zack, 1692 was the year of the Salem witch trials. Do you know about the Salem witch trials? Oh, sure. Yeah, kind of. Actually, no. Tell me. Well, said Spencer, in 1692, most people in Salem, Massachusetts, were Puritans. They had a very strict life. It was against the law not to go to church. Falling asleep in church was a sin. You got punished. Very strict, as I said. Anyway, in January of 1692, 2 girls in Salem started acting really weird. As weird as the girls we know? Even weirder, said Spencer. They had fits. They shouted gibberish. Then 8 other girls started doing the same stuff. The Puritans decided the girls had been bewitched. The girls started accusing people of bewitching them. Hundreds of people were eventually accused of witchcraft. They were thrown in jail and had to go on trial. 20 innocent people died. My itching got worse. Maybe I had a rash. As soon as I finished talking to Spencer, I went into the bathroom. I took off my shirt and looked in the mirror. I had a rash, all right, weirdly shaped red blotches on my chest and back. The blotches on my chest looked like letters of the alphabet, B, E, W, and then it went around my side to my back. I held up my dad's shaving mirror to read what it said on my back, A, R, E. Oh no! My rash had spelled out beware. Chapter 4. A few days later, I ran into Prudence again. Okay, it wasn't a coincidence. I waited a few hours outside Mrs. Coleman Levin's apartment building till she came out. Zachariah, she said, how strange to see you again. What a coincidence! It is, I said. An amazing coincidence. Your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter, Mrs. Coleman Levin, isn't about to come out here, is she? No, I don't think so. Good. Listen, Prudence, I really want to know about you. We need to talk. She looked around nervously. What is it you wish to know? She asked. Well, where are you from? Are you from New England? Mayhap. Are you from Salem, Massachusetts? She clapped her hand over my mouth. SSSHHH, she said. She looked nervous enough to jump right out of her skin. It's okay, I whispered. I know all about the witch trials. Again, she clapped her hand over my mouth. This time, she made me bite my tongue. You must never speak of that again, she whispered. Why not? I asked. I tried to sneak a peek at my tongue to see if it was bleeding. There are those who would do us harm if they heard us speak about that subject. I said. Well, that's certainly a good reason not to be heard. That there are those who would do us harm if they heard us speak about that subject. What if we went someplace where those who would do us harm couldn't hear us? Like a pizza parlor or a diner? I don't know what those two places are, Zachariah, but perhaps that is a good idea. I tried to sneak another peek at my tongue. She caught me. Why do you stick out your tongue at me, Zachariah? She said. Do you mock me? Mock you? I said. No. I was just trying to see if my tongue was bleeding. What? Never mind, I said. Hey, I know. Why don't we go to the Eat More Excelsior diner? It's only a couple of blocks away. Do you like shakes? I shake when I am cold or frightened or have the fits, she said. And I find the experience rather unpleasant. I meant a milkshake, I said. A milkshake is made with ice cream. What is ice cream? Well, it's made from ice and cream and sugar and stuff, I said. Look, you'll love it. Trust me, okay? She smiled a sad little smile. I should very much like to trust you, Zachariah, she said. These days, I cannot trust anyone at all. Prudence was crazy about the Eat More Excelsior diner the minute she saw it. Oh, Zachariah, this place pleases me very much, she said, looking around. It is so very new-looking. Really? I said. I like it because it's so old-fashioned looking. We sat down in a booth. A waitress came up to take our order. What'll you kids have? She asked. 2 chocolate shakes, I said. I turned to Prudence. Believe me, they're sensational. Prudence looked at the waitress's outfit and gasped. Why, how short your skirt is, said Prudence. Will they not take you to the ducking stool and hold your head underwater until you gasp for breath? The waitress got very huffy. You think this skirt is short? She said. It's knee-length. What costume shop did you get that thing you're wearing? Oh, please do not misunderstand me, said Prudence. The skirt you are wearing pleases me very much. Do you mind very much if I ask you where you bought it? I got it at a uniform shop, said the waitress. Please forgive my rudeness, said Prudence, but if I were to buy one, how much would it cost? Maybe $40. $40, said Prudence. Her eyes were very wide. 40 young male deer? No. The waitress rolled her eyes. $40, all right? What are dollars? Prudence asked. What kind of money do you use? I asked her. English pounds and pence? Yes, said Prudence. I think that would be like 25 English pounds, I said. Prudence's mouth fell open. 25 pounds? Prudence exclaimed. But surely you joke. 25 pounds is what my father paid for the materials he used to build both our house and barn. The waitress rolled her eyes again and left. She was joking about the price of her skirt, wasn't she? Asked Prudence. No, I said. Were you joking about the price of your house and barn? Of course not, said Prudence. We do not joke where I come from. Salem? I said. I am not from Salem, she said, looking nervously around. I am from Jalem, a small village not far from Salem. Why don't you joke there? Because there is nothing to joke about in Jalem. And because joking in Jalem is illegal. You say your friend has told you about the Salem witch trials. Did he tell you that people there accuse everyone of being a witch? Yes. He said hundreds of people were accused. Yes, hundreds in Salem, she said. And hundreds in Jalem as well. Including me. You? I asked. She nodded solemnly and then continued in a whisper. There was no evidence I was a witch. But I was found guilty anyway and thrown into the jail. Oh boy, I said. While I was in jail there was a mysterious explosion in my cell. The next thing I knew, I had landed in the 21st century, in the living room of Mrs. Coleman Levin. I have no idea how this happened, Zachariah. Mayhaps some sort of magic caused this to occur. May I speak frankly? Of course. I think that my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter had something to do with it. You mean Mrs. Coleman Levin? I said. Yes. I said. Well, from what I know about Mrs. Coleman Levin, I'd say you're probably right. She knows an awful lot about magic and stuff. And so here I am, said Prudence. She took a sip from her chocolate milkshake. Oh, she said, this pleases me greatly. It is both cold and sweet. In Jalem, we are allowed one or the other, but not both at the same time. She looked around nervously. Is this not illegal? No, of course not, I said. Listen, Prudence, I really like you. This may be crazy, but would you like to go with me to my 5th grade Halloween dance? Prudence blushed. I like you, too, Zachariah, she said. But there are those who will try to do me harm. I do not wish to endanger you by being in your company. Who is trying to do you harm? I asked her. I think somebody has followed me here from the past, she whispered. I think he may try to take me back, or worse. Oh, boy. I sure didn't like the sound of that. But I really didn't want to sound like a wuss. I'm not afraid, I said. And people from the past have never been a problem for me. I've met several of them. So will you go to the Halloween dance with me? Against my better judgment, she said. I will accept your invitation. Fantastic! I said. There is just one thing that you must know. What? I asked. If it's that you can't dance, neither can I, so it doesn't matter. No, that is not it, said Prudence. Then what is it? I said. I am a shape changer, Prudence said. A what? I said. A shape changer. Oh boy. A shape changer, I said. That's amazing. What's a shape changer? Prudence took a deep breath. She looked around, and then she leaned in close and whispered, sometimes on purpose and sometimes not, I change into an animal or another person. You what? I asked. Let me try and show you. She closed her eyes and held her breath. I got a little worried because her face was getting redder and redder, and her cheeks were all puffed out like a blowfish. Then she made a strange noise that sounded like whoo. There was a soft popping sound. And right before my eyes, she morphed into an owl. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. But there in front of me, on the other side of the booth, was an owl and no Prudence. Just then, the waitress passed by our table. She stared at the owl. The owl screeched. The waitress looked at me and shook her head. I'm sorry, she said. This restaurant has a strict no-owl policy. Okay, I said. Prudence, the waitress says the restaurant has a strict no-owl policy. Please turn back into yourself. All right, said the owl. There was another soft popping sound. The owl morphed into a huge brown bear. The waitress quickly backed away. Actually, she said nervously, our policy on bears is a lot looser than the one on owls. The waitress left quickly. People were beginning to stare at the bear. Okay, Prudence, I said to the bear. Please turn back into yourself. All right, said the bear. Prudence morphed again into a bunny. Nope, I told the bunny. You haven't quite got it yet. She tried again. The bunny turned back into Prudence. There you go, I said. Do you see the problem? Prudence asked. I do not have much control over these powers. Is that why they accused you of being a witch? I asked. Because you're a shape changer? No, she said. Nobody even knows about the shape changing. They accuse me of being a witch because they accuse everyone of being a witch. To tell you the truth, all this shape changing was kind of freaking me out. But I didn't want to appear uncool in front of Prudence. Do you still wish to take me to the dance? She asked. Sure, I said. I'm cool with it. She frowned. You are cool with it? Are you saying that my shape changing lowers your body temperature? I'm saying that the shape changing makes no difference to me. Truly? Prudence asked. Truly, I answered. Without any warning at all, Prudence suddenly leaned across the table and kissed me. That really caught me off guard. I guess it left both of us pretty flustered. Prudence's face got bright red. Then she ran out of the diner. I think she was embarrassed. Or maybe she was about to change shape again. I couldn't believe it, my first kiss from a girl who wasn't a relative. This was serious stuff. And it happened on a real date, an actual buying a shake for a girl who knew she was with me date. I had gone from being an unkissed guy to a kissed guy in about 1 second. I felt different somehow. I felt very grown up. I felt a lot more experienced with girls than either Vernon or Spencer or Andrew either, because he was such a liar. Well, that did it. Now I was really in love. I mean, what other choice did I have? I went home. I was really excited. Hey, Dad, I said. How old do you have to be to get married in New York State? 37, Dad answered. I didn't think Dad was ready for the serious kind of discussion I needed, so I went to Spencer's house. Spencer had put new batteries in his calculator and was trying to calculate the odds of various girls agreeing to go to the Halloween dance with him. I told him about my date with Prudence at the Eat More Excelsior diner. He was pretty impressed that she had kissed me. Spencer, you are looking at a totally kissed guy, I said. I will never again be an innocent unkissed guy. I feel different. Do I look different to you? Spencer studied me. Yes, Zack. You have a little chocolate smeared on your chin. Spencer, I really like that girl, I said. I don't even care that she's 311 years older than me. Good, said Spencer. You'll probably learn a lot by dating an older woman. If things go really well at the dance, I said, I'm thinking of asking Prudence to marry me. Zack, you're nuts. Plus, nobody in New York State would perform a wedding for a 10-year-old boy, said Spencer. How about if we add our ages together and divide by 2? I said. 321 plus 10. That's 331. Divide by 2, and that makes our average age 165 and a half. I don't think age averaging gets you married, said Spencer. Okay, I said, then maybe we could just get engaged and then wait till I'm 18. Zack, said Spencer, think about what your life would be like if you and Prudence got married. I mean, for example, how would you earn a living while you and Prudence finished school? I don't know, I said. Maybe Dad could just raise my allowance or something. What makes you so sure she's the girl for you? Spencer asked. You hardly know her. There are probably a ton of things about her that will bug you once you know her better. No, she's practically perfect for me. Only practically perfect? So what's the unperfect part, said Spencer. Well, when I'm with her, I break out in an itchy rash. And sometimes Prudence morphs into an animal like an owl, a bear, or a bunny. How do you know this? Spencer asked. It happened when we went to the Eat More Excelsior diner. She morphed into an owl, then a bear and a bunny. And was this a problem for you? Spencer asked. It was, kind of, I said. I found it a little, embarrassing. See, said Spencer. That's just the kind of thing I was talking about. I don't want to tell you what to do with your life, but you might not want to rush into this. Because morphing into owls, bears, or bunnies might put a real strain on a marriage. I thought seriously about what Spencer had said. Then I decided it didn't matter. If you love somebody, you overlook the little problems. I couldn't wait till the Halloween dance. It was just 4 days away. The night before the dance, I was in the bathroom, washing up for bed. I turned on the faucet in the sink. Instead of water, out came black ink. The ink dribbled into letters on the white sink. It spelled out. I already warned you once and you didn't believe me. Stay away from Prudence. Dad, could you come in here a second? I called. What is it, Zack? Dad called. Could you just take a look at something in here? I called. I'm a little busy right now, Dad called. What do you want me to look at? Black ink is coming out of the bathroom faucet, I called. And it's writing something. Black ink doesn't come out of bathroom faucets and write things, Dad called. Could you just please come and take a look at it? I called. Okay, Dad called. Dad came into the bathroom. Black ink doesn't come out of bathroom faucets, Zack, said Dad. It's not ink. It's rust. Rust is sometimes a blackish, brownish color. Dad looked down into the sink. Okay, he said. That's definitely black ink, and it has definitely written something. I'll call the plumber in the morning. Chapter 5. The big night finally arrived. October 31st, the night of the 5th grade. Halloween dance. Dad managed to tear himself away from his article on antique stores long enough to drive me to Mrs. Coleman Levin's to pick up Prudence. I was dressed in a cape and a shirt with pumpkins all over it. Mrs. Coleman-Levin greeted me at the door. She was dressed as a fairy princess in long, flowing robes. She was one of the chaperones. But that's not why she was dressed as a fairy princess. "Hello, Zack," she said. "I like your costume." "Thanks," I said. In the background, I could hear somebody flushing the toilet over and over again and turning the water on and off in the bathroom sink. "Prudence just can't get over the wonders of modern plumbing," said Mrs. Coleman-Levin. "Prudence, your escort is here." Prudence came into the room. She was dressed as a pilgrim girl. She didn't have to think too hard to come up with that idea. "Good evening, Zachariah," she said. "Do you have such a wondrous bathroom in your home, too?" "Sure," I said. "It is truly one of the 7 wonders of the world. And I am well pleased by the little whirlpool in the bowl when you push the handle." "Prudence just can't get used to indoor plumbing," said Mrs. Coleman-Levin. "I cannot even imagine what it has to do with plums," said Prudence. "Although I certainly prefer it to an outhouse. Tell me, what do you call the fire in the glass ball again?" "Electricity," said Mrs. Coleman-Levin. "Zack, I think we'd better get to the dance." I was relieved that I hadn't started itching when Prudence came in. Good. I didn't want to be allergic to her. Dad drove us to the dance. "Have a great time, guys," he said. "Till pick you up at midnight." The Horace Hyde-White gym was decorated with lots of orange and black crepe paper. The lighting was very low and spooky. There were flickering candles everywhere. There were carved pumpkins with scary faces. There was an open coffin filled with ice and cans of soda. Our principal, Mr. Underpants, was dressed as Merlin the magician. He had a long, silver robe and a pointy hat. Some of the kids were dressed as ghosts. Some girls were dressed as witches. That made Prudence very nervous. "Are these children not afraid of being thrown in jail and brought to trial as witches?" she whispered. "No," I said. "They're not real witches, Prudence. Also, we don't throw people in jail for witchcraft in this country anymore." "Really, Zachariah? When did you stop?" "Right after the Salem witch trials." "How marvelous!" "Unfortunately, even as we speak, many of my friends are in jail, fearing for their lives." "That's terrible," I said. "But at least you escaped. At least you're safe." She sighed. "I feel guilty to be safe, Zachariah. I feel I must go back to Jalem and try to help them." Tears formed in her eyes. "But why?" I said. "They'll do terrible things to you if you go back there now, Prudence." "Won't they?" "Yes, Zachariah, if they catch me. But perhaps I can use my shape-changing to keep out of their hands." I hated the idea of Prudence being caught again. I couldn't stand the idea of her leaving, especially now that she had kissed me. "Prudence," I said, "please stay here in the 21st century, where you're safe." She seemed very touched by what I'd said. She took my hand and looked deeply into my eyes. Oh. I was starting to itch again. "You really are a wonderful young man, Zachariah," she said. "I am so glad that I met you." "What's so wonderful about him?" asked a voice behind us. It was Vernon. He was dressed like a clown. "Oh, hi, Vernon," I said. "Prudence, this is Vernon." "Vernon, this is Prudence." "How do you do, Vernon?" asked Prudence. "Charmed to meet you, Prudence," said Vernon. I don't believe I've seen you before. Are you from this neighborhood? No, she's from Massachusetts, I said. All of a sudden, the itching got worse. I started wriggling around, trying to scratch my back. Zack, what's wrong with you? Asked Vernon. Nothing, I said. Vernon turned back to Prudence. All the way from Massachusetts, huh? He said. So what brings you to New York? Mrs. Coleman Levin brought me here, said Prudence. It was a surprise. Hey, Zack, aren't you going to introduce me to your date? Asked another voice behind me. It was Andrew. He was dressed like a dog. Oh, hi, Andrew, I said. Wow. The itching was getting brutal. Prudence, this is Andrew. Andrew, Prudence. How do you do, Andrew? Asked Prudence. She gave me a funny look. I do better than Zack or Vernon, said Andrew. Everybody laughed. Spencer walked over. He was dressed as a chicken, completely covered in feathers. Hello, Prudence, said Spencer. Oh, said Prudence, surprised somebody knew her. You must be Spencer. Then, just as the itching got so bad it made me want to jump out of my skin, I caught sight of something very scary-looking, a tall man, dressed like a ghost in a hooded black shroud. There was something strange about his eyes. They glowed like coals in a bonfire. Prudence saw the black ghost the same time I did. She suddenly got very pale. Who is that? She whispered. Do you know that person? No, I said. The black ghost saw us and began walking in our direction. The closer he got, the more I itched. Oh, no,